Have you ever poured your heart and soul into something only to be cut out without a word? Not just let go, but erased like you never existed. That's exactly what happened to me. But here's the twist: they used my code anyway. What they didn't realize was that I'd hidden a little surprise deep inside, a ticking time bomb, and on launch day, it exploded. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's about ownership, respect, and what happens when people underestimate the person behind the work. So stick with me, because by the end of this, you'll see how silence can bring down an empire. It wasn't a dramatic firing. No angry emails or shouting matches. It was silence. That heavy kind of silence you feel in your chest. The kind where your keycard still opens doors, but no one even looks you in the eye anymore. I remember sitting outside the server room on a cold metal bench, holding my company laptop, the barcode with my name half scratched off. Upstairs, the executives whispered as if they were planning a memorial for me. The same people who once called me the crown jewel of the product team. Their words echoed in my head. Just copy her architecture. It's already there. No need to rebuild. Just rename the repo before launch. They thought they could sunset me like outdated software and move on. But this wasn't just code. This was me. Written in stolen moments during nights filled with grief and chaos, the kind of pain you don't share but channel into your work. The algorithm that had investors drooling was born between sorting out my mother's will and deleting her hospice voicemails. I remember that night clearly. After signing the final papers transferring my mother's estate, I sat alone in my tiny apartment, hands shaking as I wrote the final lines of code for a crucial feature. Every line was a promise to myself to make this project succeed, to prove I wasn't going anywhere. They had no idea I'd hidden a time bomb inside that code. A lock disguised as a harmless error handler quietly waiting for its moment. And then launch day came. While everyone else was busy celebrating printing banners, prepping interviews, scheduling glowing Forbes articles, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city lights blink like they owed me something. Then my phone buzzed. A blocked number. No voicemail, just one text: "It's not booting." Want to know what happened next? How that quiet trigger tore through their system, bringing down millions of dollars, reputations, and futures. Stay with me. Because this is more than just a tech story. It's a lesson about protecting your work, owning your story, and what happens when the people you trusted forget who built the foundation. Right after they cut me loose, they thought they had it all figured out. Like, it was a game of copy and paste. Just grab my code, change a few labels, rename the repo, and boom, launch success. They didn't stop to think that the foundation was wired with more than just functions and classes. It was wired with a warning, a lock, a last line of defense. What they missed was the license check, a piece of code I'd hidden so deep it looked like an ancient relic nobody wanted to mess with. It was tucked inside an old error handler marked "deprecated," the kind of code everyone fears to touch because it just works. That little snippet was waiting quietly, counting down to the moment the license would expire. And when that moment came at midnight on launch day, the whole system hit an immovable brick wall. No warning bells, no fanfare, just a silent shutdown. Users trying to log in were greeted with a bright red banner that read, "License expired. Contact owner to renew. No way around it, no tricks, just a dead end." The team completely blindsided. Upstairs, they were busy with the launch party plans, printing banners, prepping interviews, and scheduling glowing features in Forbes about how their human offboarding process was cutting costs and boosting efficiency. They were busy celebrating a future they thought was guaranteed. Meanwhile, the system was crumbling. At first, it was just a trickle of confused messages. Then the floodgates opened. Emails, texts, Slack pings. They were desperate for answers, scrambling to fix a problem they didn't even understand existed. And there I was, watching it all unfold from my quiet apartment, nursing a glass of Cabernet, watching the city lights flicker like they owed me something. The silence around me was thick. I wasn't responding to the frantic texts or the desperate emails from the VP of product, who was known for his arrogance but suddenly sounded like a man drowning. I could almost hear their panic as the clock ticked on. When they finally realized what had happened, the scramble was frantic. Engineers dove into the codebase, fingers trembling, trying to find the kill switch. But the genius of that hidden trigger was that it looked like a ghost, like a harmless typo left by someone long gone, like a whisper in an empty corridor. There was no obvious sabotage to detect. Their rushed attempts to fix it were reckless. They pushed a hotfix live without proper testing or verification, bypassing two-factor authentication and ignoring all the warning logs I had carefully embedded. That's when everything truly broke. The system began throwing error after error, service unavailable, bad gateway, legal restrictions, one after another, each worse than the last. The third-party API providers pulled access triggered by my self-terminating webhooks that locked them out as soon as they tried to bypass the license. The infrastructure groaned under the pressure of millions of failed calls per second. By 10 a.m., the startup that was supposed to be the next big thing was falling apart on Twitter, Reddit, and every social platform imaginable. Investors started asking questions. Users were furious. And internally, emails leaked accusing former staff of sabotage, the CEO blamed external attacks, and the legal team sent cold warnings about potential lawsuits. Meanwhile, I uploaded every piece of evidence I'd gathered over months. The license terms, the ignored warnings, the deleted messages, all publicly. A single line at the bottom read, "If you're seeing this, it means they forgot who built the foundation." That was just the beginning. The moment the system crashed, chaos erupted like a storm nobody could control. Users were furious. Social media exploded with complaints and videos showing frozen screens and error messages. The cutting-edge AI insights everyone hyped about turned into a joke overnight. One user's video titled, "Biggest Launch of 2025, more like a TED Talk from a fax machine," went viral before most people had even finished their morning coffee. Inside the company, panic set in fast. The VP of product was sending frantic messages begging for answers. The interim CTO called repeatedly, each time sounding more desperate. Legal teams started poking around looking for someone to blame, while the CEO scrambled to spin a story about external sabotage. But they missed the truth. The heart of the problem was something I'd left behind, carefully hidden. Their attempts to patch the system only made things worse. In their rush, they bypassed essential security checks and ignored warning signs embedded deep in the code. Each hotfix was a gamble that failed spectacularly. Errors piled up, service unavailable, bad gateway, even legal takedown notices from API providers cutting access, because my self-terminating webhooks triggered automatically. The infrastructure collapsed under the weight of millions of failed calls per second. The company had poured tens of millions into the launch, but all they got was a broken shell. Investors smelled trouble and started asking questions on LinkedIn, hunting for answers or scapegoats. Internal emails leaked blaming former employees and alleging sabotage. Meanwhile, I stayed silent, watching it all unfold. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about respect, about showing them that you don't mess with the person who built your foundation. As soon as I made everything public, the original license terms, the ignored warnings, every Slack message they tried to erase, it was like I'd set off a digital wildfire. The reaction was instantaneous and brutal. On Twitter and Reddit, the story blew up. Memes flooded timelines faster than anyone could keep up with. The leaked recording from their town hall meeting became an instant sensation. There, the VP of product casually dismissed the importance of code, with a phrase that would echo far beyond the walls of that office: code is replaceable. People aren't. That line wasn't just a soundbite. It became a viral anthem. People lip-synced it on TikTok while setting toasters on fire or performing absurd dances. It was the perfect symbol for the implosion of a company that had promised revolution but delivered chaos. Meanwhile, the boardroom was emptying out. Board members resigned in quick succession, citing personal reasons, but everyone knew it was fallout from the disaster. User ratings plummeted from an impressive 4.7 to a devastating 1.3 almost overnight. Reviews poured in, filled with disappointment, anger, and disbelief. Then a new bombshell dropped. A junior engineer, probably still new enough to remember orientation donuts, found a hidden comment buried deep in the back-end code that I had written over a year ago. "If you're looking here, it means you missed the warnings. You trusted shortcuts, and now you're out of time." That comment spread like wildfire. It was copied, reposted, and printed on t-shirts, mugs, and even coffee cups. The tech community affectionately nicknamed me the Santa Claus of the startup world, because I'd brought them gifts they didn't want to open. Inside the company's walls, the situation became desperate. The leadership locked down Slack channels, froze internal emails, and issued emergency directives forbidding anyone from writing about the incident. It was a futile attempt to control the narrative, but the truth had already slipped through their fingers. In a last-ditch effort, someone tried to reboot an old build I had deprecated 18 months earlier. This was the version I used to test recursive load tolerance, one that triggered an infinite loop if it didn't find the right credentials. Unsurprisingly, the reboot lasted only 42 seconds before it auto-bricked. The system was throttled by AWS for excessive requests as the loop hammered the back end relentlessly. The The CTO tried to spin it as a distributed denial of service attack. I laughed so hard I spilled my wine. By this time, product analysts and tech influencers on YouTube were dissecting my license clause like it was a blockbuster film. One analyst with neon-lit microphones summed it up perfectly. They treated her like a feature. She built the skeleton and then pulled the spine. The company wasn't just failing, it was imploding spectacularly. While the old empire crumbled around them, something unexpected happened for me. In the middle of all the chaos, I got a message not from the frantic VP, not from legal, not from the ex-colleagues pleading for help, but from a rival CTO. This wasn't just any rival. This was a big player, the kind of company with smart coffee machines and conference rooms named after constellations. His message was simple. We read your commit. We want to talk. He didn't ask about the sabotage or the collapse. Instead, he wanted to understand how I built the architecture, why I structured the logic the way I did, and most importantly, how I hid that license check so elegantly inside the code. We set up a remote meeting. I was in my living room wearing sweatpants and an old conference hoodie. He smiled as I explained everything, the design choices, the hidden safeguards, the philosophy behind building something resilient, yet controlled. By the end of the call, he offered me triple my last salary, full ownership, and complete autonomy to build a new team from scratch. It was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. Meanwhile, back at the failed startup, the fallout only worsened. Harper, once a friend who had cried on my shoulder after a failed demo, was escorted out. Evan, the VP, deleted his LinkedIn profile. Their PR team scrambled to spin the narrative, blaming a rogue script or third-party error. But the internet wasn't buying it. A former engineer found a snapshot of the repo from 6 months earlier. My name was all over the commits. Another leaked a pitch deck showing a diagram I had drawn 2 years ago, my handwriting still visible in the corner. They hadn't just reused my code, they'd built a mythology around it. And when the gods fall, they fall hard. As the dust began to settle on the ruins of what once was a promising startup, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The wreckage was more than just broken code or failed launches. It was a lesson carved deeply into the fabric of who I was as a creator and as a person. I could have stayed on the sidelines watching the chaos unfold and feeling bitter about what was lost, but that's not who I am. Instead, I chose to move forward, to rebuild, to reclaim my story on my own terms. I'm building something new now, a project born from every mistake they made, every betrayal I endured, and every lesson learned in the silence that followed. This time there are no shortcuts, no back doors for anyone to sneak through. Just transparency, respect, and full ownership. The real lesson here goes far beyond tech or contracts. It's a reminder to every creator out there, whether you're writing code, designing products, creating art, or crafting ideas, that your work is your legacy. And legacies deserve protection. Know your worth. Understand the power you hold in your hands. Don't let anyone diminish your contribution or rewrite your story without your say. In a world that moves fast and often forgets who built what, the quiet power of ownership is the strongest kind of resistance. Sometimes the loudest voice isn't a scream or a confrontation. It's the silence that follows when you simply stop enabling those who take without giving credit. It's the moment you turn off the lights and watch the whole stage go dark. That silence speaks louder than any words could. It tells a story of respect denied, boundaries crossed, and the inevitable collapse that comes when foundations are ignored. And then when you're ready, you rebuild. Stronger, wiser, more determined. That night, sitting in my favorite cafe, the one just a few blocks from the old company's building, I opened my laptop. I took a deep breath and started typing the first lines of a brand new README file, my manifesto, my blueprint, my new beginning. For the first time in a long time, I felt the kind of calm that comes from knowing I'm finally in control of my own story. The future is unwritten, but one thing is certain, this time I hold the keys. So what about you? If you're building something, your career, your business, your art, remember this story. Protect what's yours fiercely. Don't let anyone rewrite your code, your vision, or your legacy. Because in the end, owning your story is the greatest power you have. This story isn't just mine, it's a warning and an inspiration for anyone who creates. In a world where ideas and code can be stolen or erased, your most valuable asset is your ownership over your work, your story, your legacy. Don't wait for someone else to give you permission to own your voice. Take it, protect it, build on it. Remember, sometimes the quietest power isn't shouting louder, but knowing when to stay silent and when to rise again stronger than ever. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had to fight for your work or your voice? I want to hear your story.